So the real reason why you're here to help us pay tribute to Mr. Paul Schrader.
I sure am. I adore him.
And you had the pleasure of working with him on his upcoming film, Adam Resurrected. Before this collaboration came about, were there works of his that you were particularly taken by?
Yes. I mean, he was a writer on Raging Bull, of course, as we know, and Taxi Driver and Last Temptation of Christ, and I loved all of those. And then saw all of his movies that he'd done. I loved Affliction, in recent years. Autofocus, I really liked. He's just done, his whole body of work is so impressive. He's just always adventurous, risky, and smart, and obviously high integrity.
I think that's what I respond to most with him, because I think he's not afraid of going to the darkest places.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from ambiguity, and he's fearless. He's one of our true fearless artists.
I think so too. He's an inspiration to me. I think he really is an artist and very brave. And this material was, I think, very challenging and delicious, but a kind of a high wire attempt. And it needed all of his interest in things dark and ambiguous, like you say. So I think he pulled it off. I really enjoyed it.
Did he approach you with this project? How did that come about?
Yeah, he did. There's a producer, Israeli producer, and it was co-produced with some German producers. But this Israeli fella, Ehud Bleiberg, it had been a passion for him for a couple of decades, taken from a book by Yoram Kaniuk called Adam Resurrected, and he'd been trying to get the rights and gone through many little dramas about it over the years, and had finally latched onto Paul Schrader, and Paul read it and apparently told him that he thought I was the one to play the part, and so they approached me. That's right.
Mm. Well, you have said that it's the most challenging and the juiciest part you've ever had on film. Could you tell our audience a little bit more about the plot of the film and the character you play in it?
Sure. It takes place in Israel in 1961, 62 roughly, in a mental institution, a rehabilitation center, kind of that employs innovative therapies of one kind or another, exclusively for concentration camp survivors. Now that we've been finished with the war for 15, 16 years, since 45, and so we're all there, and we meet me there, and through some flashbacks find out that I was a kind of a star entertainer in Berlin early on, Jewish, and I had a couple of daughters and a wife. I did animal impersonations, and I was a gifted mind reader and a terrific violinist, and kind of a big star in Berlin. And Willem Dafoe comes to one of my shows we see back in the 30s, and he's a kind of a sad, crazy character, and I do some mind reading and figure out that he's going to kill himself that very night, and through kind of including him in this bit, I expose it, but kind of laugh him out of it and kind of save his life. Years later, it turns out, when we show up at this extermination camp, and when we get off the train, he says, "Oh, Adam Stein, you're the funniest man in all of Germany. You should have seen him. He could do any kind of animals there. Here, for my dog Rex, here, do an animal impersonation. Do a dog." So I get down on my hands and knees in order to, leverage the safety of my family, and do a dog, and he laughs. He says, "That's funny." He says, "Take him to my barracks," and he makes me be a dog, living in the dog pen and eating from the dog bowl, and living outside and living in the doghouse with his dog for the remaining year and a half that I'm there. I lose my family, as it turns out, and the camp gets liberated, but by that time I'm in a horrible mess, and I've lost my mind. So when I find my way years later to Israel and to this mental institution, one of the things I tell them is they could never have dogs there. That's one thing I can't stand to be around. I can't stand to. And then I hear a dog barking from a room, and it turns out, as I make my way over there, that it's a 12-year-old boy who's feral, who's been raised by dogs or something, we think, and can only act like a dog. He can only bark. He can't speak. He can't stand on 2 feet, and nobody can help him. And through the course of the movie, even though he brings out horrible recovered memories in me and horrible associations, I reach out to him and he to me, and we kind of heal each other. It ends up in a climax in the middle of the desert and near the Dead Sea in the Negev desert, and I have kind of a spiritual healing epiphany there.
My heart's breaking, just your description of the film.
Yeah, it's something. It was really something. And Derek Jacobi's in it. Sir Derek Jacobi is the head of the hospital, and
incredible international cast. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and some great Israeli actors, Ayelet Jorer, and it's great.
It's very dark material, though. Did you have any trepidation about living in that place in yourself for so many months?
Yes. It was at times grim, but finally very educational and uplifting and inspiring. But I had about a year to prepare for it. So I went to Israel for the first time. I'd never been there before. Met Paul Schrader there. We went over the script at one point and spent a couple of days there. And then, I went to some concentration camps in Poland and Germany, spent a month in Germany and talked to survivors in Los Angeles and Israel and Europe, and saw many, studied as much as I could in the course of a year. There are people who spend a whole lifetime studying the events of that time and only scratch the surface. But I got what I could in that year, and it was amazing.
That's a real gift, a year of preparation for something like that. But working with Schrader, you're working with he's a brutally honest and kind of uncompromising artist. So I can't imagine what you're expecting before you met him. But when you finally did and started this collaboration, how did he surprise you? What surprised you about him?
Oh, he was spectacular. Well, early on, as I've done with some directors, but I knew that he and I had to closely collaborate on this and really kind of make this thing together. I said, are there any movies that I should see that I've missed? Because I'm always, there are many movies that I've missed, and he sat down, and we were in a restaurant in Israel, actually, and he wrote out on a napkin 20 movies. And I went about, when I got back to the States, and got them, many of them on Criterion, and looked at all of them and all the extra materials, so really took kind of a little course. And that was fantastic. Then, of course, I realized that he was early on with Pauline Kael, and a very serious and respected, spectacular authority on the history of cinema, and I read Schrader on Schrader, which I recommend if you haven't read it to anybody.
Terrific.
It's terrific. And so I saw these movies, some of which he said the number one movie was Rules of the Game, which I'd never seen, believe it or not. And then Tokyo Story was the second one by Ozu. A lot of people know that and like it. He said a couple of movies that he sees before he makes any movie is Performance, which I'd seen but hadn't in a long time, and The Conformist by Bertolucci. Hadn't seen that in a long time, so I saw those. Vertigo is his favorite Hitchcock movie.
I know he's crazy about Bresson, too, the Pickpocket, I think.
Yes, I saw Pickpocket. He said that movie was what made him do movies. Every movie is about a man alone in his room in a way that he's done. Taxi Driver and all those movies.
Wow.
So I saw that. Masculine Feminine is his favorite Jean-Luc Godard movie that he recommended. L'Ecclesia is an Antonioni movie that I enjoyed. And Seven Men from Now is by Bud Bedecker, and he talks about it in Schrader on Schrader. He was kind of a B Western director that a lot of people like. Very interesting. And then Fassbinder, Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, was a fascinating movie. So anyway, I saw those and many more. He's just so smart. It was just great to be with him, but always surprising, too passionate about, and we could talk with a lot of fun about American football and American politics. He's just great to talk to, and at times he's mysterious and inscrutable and very focused and direct, and sometimes you don't feel like you can really talk like sometimes I like to do around something and at length about something. You have to really kind of get to the point and cut to the meat of what you're talking. But then at other times he'd be wildly open and personal and accessible and just great to be around. And when he laughs, he's a very serious and imposing fella. Sometimes you'll just be with him in a car and he'll be thinking, and you just have to kind of be quiet and sort of live in this sort of changed air and atmosphere of seriousness and serious focused vibration, But at other times he laughs. He likes to have fun, and when he laughs, his eyes crinkle up in a sort of a squinty, almost innocent, childlike way, and he comes out with a full-bodied, unbridled laugh that is absolutely delightful and infectious.
So I was wondering what his style of directing was, because you've worked with some of the best. I mean, you've worked with Woody Allen and Spielberg and Altman and Cronenberg and on and on. What makes his style of direction unique?
Well, he's great. His story sense, I mean, in my humble opinion, I just have this little experience with him, but he knows movies so well. He knows his taste is so refined. He's so sophisticated. He knows what he wants. He's decisive. He's not intrusive in the acting, but he will, he'll tell you just the thing you need to. I came to trust him terrifically, and he would tell me just the thing that I needed to, make it better. He'd be very good, but then he's got a passion and an endurance kind of willpower during the course of this movie. It's a very difficult thing to make a movie, but this was particularly difficult, I think, in a lot of ways, and it was his singular will and to keep going and to every day kind of fight things out and to make up the shot and figure out what the best shot was. And all through editing, I saw him, and because I did a lot of post-production stuff. There was like a week of ADR and looping. It's just very impressive, his determination, his stick-to-itiveness, and his will to make a movie when, sometimes the crew is not speaking English and other people are, here and there. It's sort of one person is sort of leading this charge and making this movie, and it's conspicuously him. He's just great.
And for this role to be one of the great challenges that you've ever tackled, I hear actors speak of enjoying epiphanies in the creative process and finding moments of transcendence and that being the ultimate reward. What kind of rewards did you get from playing this character, and how does Schrader help to facilitate those?
Well, my gosh, he turned me on to not only a world of cinema that was an enhancement and expansion for me, but on this subject, he had books on German circus things, and it gave me material, and just the way, just his thirst for truthfulness and depth and authenticity sort of infected me, and while doing a part like this, it really enlarged, I think, my experience of the whole thing. And he's amazing. He's a kind of surprising mix of a lot of things. He seems in some ways to be a very kind of man's man, kind of Hemingway-like, almost kind of virile, kind of two-fisted kind of a guy. But he's so refined and intuitive and receptive and artful that when sometimes you'd watch him planning out shots and sort of devising the movement of the camera, and he would become like a dance master. He's kind of almost balletic, and in the way he moves and his sensibility. It's a very interesting mix. Sometimes he'd, in a rehearsal room, just lie down on his stomach on the floor and look at the script and be in a very kind of unexpected, way. He's just spectacular.
Oh, wow! You've seen the cut of the film. What do you want people to take away from it?
Well, I think it's really something. I've seen a cut of the locked film, and I have yet to see all the final sound mix put in, right. And the music, which is going to be great. I saw the temp mix, but and in a way, I've seen this movie more than any movie that I've ever made, because usually I'm curious and I see a movie after it's finished, and then I kind of put it on my shelf and never watch it again. Even when I happen to buy it on TV, I kind of flick by it. I don't know why.
Right.
But this movie, because I knew I was going to do the ADR, extensive ADR stuff, there's narration that I do in it, I asked them for a cut of the movie a month or two before I did that, and like I did in rehearsal. I'm nothing if not conscientious. I'd sort of rehearse the movie every day for a year and do many things, kind of immerse myself in it. But when I had this cut, I'd watch it every day, in fact, and which finally helped. But I got to know it and admire it in a lot of ways, in different ways than I ever had. And then seeing him refine the final 11th hour decisions of the cut, I was just, I got very involved in it, in my thinking and feeling about it, and impressed by him. I think it's amazing. I like it a lot. Who knows what impact it'll have on whom, but it's a very serious, unexpected, unique kind of movie.
Do you know if they have a release planned for it yet? A release?
I don't know that all that's been planned yet. I think that's all in the works.
Okay.
But he's very entertaining to be around. He's got, he's been doing it for a while, and so he's a great raconteur. He's a great storyteller, and he's got great show business stories with everybody who he knows, that are interesting.